Hi everyone, it's Andrew Nagel, and we are back for the next part of the Start to Finish Pendant Design series. In this part, we're going to be showing you the upper detailing. We're going to be using a couple of different gauges of wire here. Starting off, we're going to be using the 2x1mm rectangular wire. Then we're also going to be using some half-round wire. We're going to be using 13 gauge half-round wire. Then we're also going to be using some 30 gauge round wire. So the 30 gauge round is dead soft, as well as the rectangular wire that you see me working with here. I will leave the description of all of these in the part below. So starting off, we're going to be using about 5 inches of the rectangular wire. And as you can see, I'm attaching it kind of to the left of this post here. You'll see why I'm attaching it on that side here in a moment, once I get this tied down a bit better here. Get that end tucked in there. And then once that end is all tightened up, since I threaded it through that left side of that post, I can then just bend it around and curl it over the open section of frame that you see there. That will allow me to feed my other wires that I need through that hole and down to the frame. Give it a few more adjustments. And then I just want to make sure that it's like, on the appropriate side of that center post. Just to make sure it's all balanced and even. Curving down that back end there. Another good use for those nylon pliers is manipulating the rectangular wire. Bring those nylon pliers back in again. Flatten it all down. We want to make sure that that wire sits, flat. Not necessarily just flat with the frame, but we want to make sure that the wire doesn't, bend up and down at various different points. We want it to be one smooth line. Once you've got your rectangular wire kind of set, we're ready to do that to the other side, using another length of rectangular wire, about 5 inches as well. Going to bring that through. And again, well, this will be on the right side of the post this time, but basically the idea is you're feeding it on the outside of the post so you can swirl the wire onto the inside, if that makes sense. It's kind of hard to describe, but you basically want the wire to naturally flow from the tie-down point and then radiate out into your spiral. You don't want it to have to curve back over that post and then back around. Go ahead and curl that rectangular wire, forming your second swirl there. We'll use those nylon pliers again and flatten it down. Then we will bend that bottom corner back around again, just like we did on the other side. Make it really even on the two sides. Bring that corner in just a bit more. Alright, that's looking pretty darn close. Now we're ready to put in our half round wires. So starting with two different lengths of half round wire, they're each going to be about, again, like 5-6 inches or so. We'll take those wires and we're going to feed it through. You'll see that loop that we kind of left open there. There should be a little nook in between each of the loops, each of the spirals, and you should be able to feed it through there to keep it on the outside of that rectangular wire, and then you can attach it to your frame, whatever's closest to you. I'm going to use this outer point right here. Then we're going to, once we've attached our half round wire, we're going to bend it down and form it along the length of the rectangular wire. Try to keep that dome facing up. That's why I like the half round wires, because it simulates the low dome. At least the thicker gauges do. It's a lot easier to work with. And then once you've lined it up with your rectangular wire, you're going to want to form another curve back out, but we're going to keep it about 1 to 2 centimeters above the rectangular wire's bottom curl. So that way we can form kind of a opening weave down there. We're going to polish these wires up. I've started doing this more often in my work because I've noticed these pieces of wire are a little hard to polish after you've added some of the 30 gauge, otherwise you might damage the 30 gauge wire. And so I used a progression of the silicone wheels to polish them up and just make them look real nice before I started adding my detail wire. So now, taking that 30 gauge, we're going to feed it through to the back end, and we're going to start to wrap it around the half round wire. Continue wrapping around the half round wire, and then attach your back end of the 30 gauge to the frame. That'll make it a lot easier to work with the wire as well. And we always want to make sure that we're tying down our 30 gauge to the frame, when we're working with this gauge of wire. There's some instances where you don't have to tie it down to the frame, like coils and stuff like that, but most of the time, if you're working a weave kind of like this, you're going to want to attach it to the frame. Now I'm going to start going around both of the rectangular and the half round wire all together. I'm not going to really weave it up here. And then I'm going to go back down to the half round wire and continue wrapping around that wire. I'm going to do the same thing going around both wires again here right about now. And then I'm going to go 3 times around and then back around the half round wire like 4 times. And then back around both wires to connect them and make just a little bit of a pattern right there. Mess around with this part of the process. You can do what I'm doing in the video, or you can go ahead and mix up, how many times you go around the half round wire versus how many times you go around the rectangular wire. So mix it up and get creative with it. Going to continue down the half round wire. I had a little bit of a problem keeping it super tight on one of those, extra wraparounds. Then when we get down to the bottom, we're going to start to weave it between the rectangular and the half round wire. And what I mean is we're going to do a cross weave, so we're going to go, coming up from one wire over the other one and then wrap it around, and then coming up from that one and then go around to the other one and wrap it around that, or vice versa. And then because the rectangular wire covers more surface area on the outer curve, you're going to need to wrap your 30 gauge around that outside, the 2x1 rectangular wire. You're going to need to wrap it around that a couple more times before you go down to the bottom one to create that opening weave effect. Since there's more surface area on the top, you're going to have to go a progression of 2 times, and then back down to the half round wire, and then 3 times around the rectangular wire, and then back down to the half round wire, then 4 times around the rectangular wire, and so on and so on. I like to just do a good alternating pattern like that, progressing of 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and then it just opens up the weave very nicely like that. I do have some spiral weave detailing videos that really demonstrate that very well. Go ahead and clip off your extras and tie down your gauges of wire when you're done creating your weave detailing. And then once you've gotten your tips tied down, you're ready to start the same process on the other side, taking that length of half round wire and feeding it through that little nook again and tying it down to your frame. We're going to form it very much the same way, just bring it on the outside of that rectangular wire again. And do the same weave pattern. I did the same progression where I wrapped it around both, and then, the opening weave pattern at the bottom. Same process, polish up that wire as well before you start doing the weave. Once you get it all formed, you're ready to take your 30 gauge down that wire again. And again, once you're done with your weave pattern on the whichever side you're working on, you will be ready to tie down your points back to the frame. I don't know if it works out this well on your guys's, but on my frame, my tie down points came right to these openings and on the outer side of the frame, and it just worked very well to tie them down right there. Getting those tips tucked in. And there's the upper detailing. And again, there's an update video out there, but next week I'm not going to have the next part of this out, but I will be coming back in 2 weeks with the next part of this. We will be doing the stone setting up in the top, setting some faceted stones, and I'll also have some other videos for you when I'm back after my little hiatus. Thanks everyone, I hope you have a great weekend out there.